Private First Class. Michael Donovan pressed his cheek against the frozen stock of his M1903 Springfield, watching his breath fog the November air. Through his scope, he could see exactly 340 yards of rubble, the shattered remains of what used to be a textile factory. Somewhere in those ruins, a German sniper had already killed 2 Americans in the past 4 hours. Donovan's spotter, Private Jimmy Castellano from Newark, lay 15 feet behind him, scanning with binoculars. "Nothing," Castellano whispered. "Same as Reynolds, same as Harper. They see us before we see them every damn time." Before we continue with Donovan's incredible story, we need your help to keep these forgotten heroes alive. If you're already hooked by what you're hearing, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about real history. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of courage and innovation from World War II. And here's something we love. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from, your country, your city. We have viewers from Buenos Aires to Berlin, from Manila to Montreal. Are you a veteran? Did your grandfather serve? Do you have a connection to this war? We want to hear from you. Now back to Metz, November 18th, 1944, where Michael Donovan was about to realize something that would change American sniper doctrine forever. Michael Donovan wasn't supposed to be a sniper. He was supposed to be fixing tractors. 23 years old, 5'9". With hands permanently stained from engine grease, Donovan had spent his entire life in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, working at his father's farm equipment repair shop. He'd enlisted in July 1943, not out of patriotism or adventure, but because the draft was coming anyway and he figured the army needed mechanics. They made him a rifleman instead. "Your scores are too high," the sergeant had told him at Fort Benning. "Anyone who can group 5 rounds in a 2-inch circle at 300 yards doesn't waste time changing oil filters." By October 1944, Donovan was attached to the 5th Infantry Division, assigned to sniper teams supporting the assault on Metz, one of the most fortified cities in Europe. The Germans had turned every building, every basement, every blown-out window into a firing position. Fort Bryant alone had walls 12 feet thick, but the real killers weren't behind fortress walls. They were in the rubble. German snipers, veterans of Stalingrad and Kursk, who knew how to turn a city into a maze of death. Between November 8th and November 17th, 12 American snipers had been killed in Metz. All the same way, shot before they could acquire their targets. The Germans weren't just better trained, they had better optics, better positions, and something else, something the Americans couldn't figure out. Every engagement followed the same pattern. American sniper takes position, begins scanning, takes a round through the head or chest before ever seeing the enemy. Thomas Reynolds was the first one Donovan lost. Reynolds was from Billings, Montana, 25 years old, married with a 6-month-old daughter he'd never met. He'd spent his pre-war years hunting elk in the Beartooth Mountains. "Best damn shot I ever saw," Donovan would say later. Reynolds had told Donovan about his plan. After the war, he'd open a hunting guide service. "Mountain Men Outfitters, Reynolds and Donovan, 50-50. We'll make a fortune off rich city boys who can't hit a barn." They shook hands on it November 15th, 1944. Reynolds died November 16th, 11:23 a.m. German round through the left temple. He'd been in position for 7 minutes, scanning the same factory ruins Donovan was watching now. He never saw the shooter. David Harper, from Columbus, Ohio, died the same way on November 17th, 21 years old, engaged to his high school sweetheart, shot through the throat after 9 minutes in position. The pattern was clear. The Americans were losing the vision war. "It's not the rifles," Captain Morris had said in the November 17th briefing, his voice tight with frustration. "It's not the training. They're seeing us before we see them, and I need someone to figure out why." That night, Donovan couldn't sleep. He lay in his bedroll in the basement of a half-destroyed pharmacy, listening to artillery rumble in the distance. His Springfield lay beside him, the scope wrapped in a torn piece of canvas to protect the lenses. The problem wasn't the rifle, the problem wasn't the training. The problem was that a sniper scope, no matter how powerful, showed you exactly one thing: what was directly in front of you. A 6-degree field of view, maybe 8 degrees if you were lucky. Tunnel vision. And while you were staring through that tunnel, scanning left to right, up and down, trying to spot the enemy, you had no awareness of anything outside that narrow cone. The German snipers weren't better shots. They were better at seeing the whole battlefield. Donovan sat up. He pulled his rucksack close and dug through it until he found what he was looking for: a small rectangular shaving mirror, 3 inches by 4 inches, with a folding metal frame. Standard army issue. He'd been carrying it since boot camp. He held it up, angling it to catch the dim light from a street fire outside. In the mirror's reflection, he could see the doorway behind him, the stairs leading up, the window 15 feet to his left. What if? Donovan spent the next 40 minutes working in near-total darkness. He used paracord from his pack to lash the mirror to the side of his Springfield scope, positioning it at a 45-degree angle. The cord wasn't strong enough alone, so he added wire stripped from a destroyed radio. Then he wrapped the whole assembly in black electrical tape, scavenged from the pharmacy's supply room, making sure no reflective surfaces would give away his position. The result looked ridiculous. A shaving mirror duct-taped to a rifle scope, but when Donovan raised the rifle and looked through the scope, he could see something new. In his peripheral vision, the angled mirror showed him a slice of the world to his left, about 30 degrees of coverage, distorted but visible. He adjusted the angle. Better. Now he could scan through his scope while simultaneously monitoring his flank. If a German sniper moved into position to his left while he was focused forward, the mirror would catch it. "Donovan, what the hell are you doing?" Castellano stood in the doorway, staring at the Frankenstein rifle. "Testing something. That looks insane. Reynolds is dead. Harper's dead. I'm trying not to be next." Castellano was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "You going out tomorrow?" "Yeah." "Want me to spot?" "You should stay back. If this doesn't work, if it doesn't work, you'll be dead, and I'll have to break in another sniper. I'm coming." November 18th, 6:47 a.m. The same rubble-strewn factory ruins, the same German sniper who'd killed Reynolds. Donovan moved into position slowly, using a different approach than Reynolds had used. He'd studied the terrain all night. Instead of taking the obvious elevated position, a blown-out third-floor window with clear sightlines, he chose a ground-level spot behind a collapsed wall, partially concealed by a burned-out truck. Lower visibility, but harder to spot. He settled in, Springfield resting on a chunk of concrete. Through his scope, he began the methodical process of scanning, left to right, near to far, checking every window, every shadow, every gap in the rubble. His breathing slowed, his heartbeat steadied. The mirror, angled to his left, showed a distorted view of the street beside him. 7 minutes passed. The same amount of time Reynolds had lasted. Donovan's scope moved across a pile of broken bricks, a shattered window frame, a section of collapsed roof. Nothing. The temperature was dropping. His fingers ached. Beside him, Castellano scanned with binoculars covering the right flank. 9 minutes. Harper's limit. Then, in the mirror's reflection, something moved. Not in front of him, to his left. A shape, low to the ground, slipping between 2 sections of rubble about 50 yards away. Donovan didn't turn his head. He stayed frozen, scope still trained forward, but his awareness shifted entirely to that peripheral movement. There, again, a German soldier crawling into position in a bombed-out storefront. The angle was wrong for a direct shot. Donovan would have to rotate 45 degrees, expose himself, lose his concealment. But he'd seen the threat before the threat saw him. That changed everything. Donovan waited. His scope remained forward, but his mind tracked the German's position through the mirror. The enemy sniper was setting up, probably getting ready to scan the obvious positions, like the third-floor window where Reynolds had died. "Left flank," Donovan whispered. 50 yards, storefront. "He's not looking at us yet." Castellano shifted his binoculars. "Got him. He's scanning right. Away from us. On my count, I'm pivoting. 3, 2, 1. Donovan rotated left, smooth and fast, bringing the Springfield around. The German sniper, visible now through his scope, was pressed against a window frame, his own rifle aimed to the right. He hadn't seen Donovan move. Donovan's crosshairs settled on the center mass. He exhaled slowly, let his heartbeat steady. The Springfield kicked, the German dropped. "Hit," Castellano confirmed. "He's down. Christ, Donovan, he never even saw you." Donovan's hands were shaking, not from fear, from realization. The mirror had given him 4, maybe 5 seconds of advance warning. That was the difference. That was everything. But the real test came 20 minutes later. Another German sniper, this one operating from the factory's second floor. Donovan spotted him through his scope, a flicker of movement in a destroyed office. The range was 280 yards, difficult but manageable. Donovan lined up the shot, began the breathing sequence, started the trigger squeeze. Then the mirror showed movement, right side this time. He'd rotated the rifle, so the mirror now covered his right flank. A second German, 40 yards away, crawling through rubble. This one had a Carabiner 98K, and he was moving into a position that would give him a clear line on Donovan's current spot. "Second shooter, right side," Donovan whispered. 40 yards. "I don't see him," Castellano hissed. "Trust me." Donovan had a choice. Take the long-range shot and risk getting flanked, or abandon the target and deal with the immediate threat. He pivoted right, fast. The Springfield scope found the closer German, who was just raising his own rifle. Donovan fired. The German went down. Then Donovan pivoted back left, reacquired the factory sniper, who was now moving, spooked by the gunfire. Donovan tracked him through a window gap, led the target by 2 feet, fired. Both Germans dead. 30 seconds. 0 American casualties. "Jesus Christ," Castellano said. "That mirror thing actually works." By November 20th, 3 other snipers had asked Donovan how he was doing it. He showed them. Private Louis Chen from San Francisco watched Donovan tape a second mirror to his rifle, angled to the right this time, giving coverage on both flanks. "It's not about the shot," Donovan explained. "It's about seeing the battlefield. You can't kill what you don't see, but you also can't survive if you don't see what's trying to kill you." Chen tried it that afternoon. Same factory district, different sector. He survived a German counter-sniper ambush by spotting the flanking movement in his mirror and relocating before the enemy could fire. 2 days later, Chen had his own double mirror setup, and he'd shared the idea with Corporal James Wu from Portland. By November 25th, 7 American snipers in the 5th Infantry Division were using mirror mods. The results were immediate and dramatic. Before the mirrors, 12 American snipers killed in 10 days. Average survival time in active sniper position, 8, 3 minutes. Confirmed kills per sniper, 1, 2 average. After the mirrors, 2 American snipers killed in 15 days. Average survival time in active sniper position, 34 minutes. Confirmed kills per sniper, 3, 8 average. The Germans noticed. A captured German intelligence report, dated December 3, 1944, included this observation. American sniper effectiveness in Metz sector has increased significantly since mid-November. Enemy snipers appear to have improved peripheral awareness and are responding to flanking maneuvers with unusual speed. recommend increased caution and revised positioning protocols. What the report didn't mention was that German snipers had started dying at triple the normal rate. The Americans weren't just surviving anymore, they were winning. But the US Army didn't care about mirrors. On December 10, 1944, a field inspection team visited the 5th Infantry Division to assess sniper operations. They saw Donovan's mirror-rigged Springfield and immediately flagged it as a violation of equipment protocols. "This is non-standard modification of military property," the captain said, running his finger along the taped mirror. "Who authorized this?" "No one, sir," Donovan replied. You just modified your assigned weapon without approval. That's destruction of government property, Private." Captain Morris, Donovan's commanding officer, stepped in. "Sir, this modification has saved lives. Our sniper KIA rate dropped by 67% after—" "I don't care if it dropped by 100%. Regulations exist for a reason. These mirrors create glare, compromise concealment, and violate the standardization protocols that keep our logistics functioning. Remove them immediately." By December 15th, the official order had come down. No unauthorized weapon modifications. Snipers caught using mirror attachments would face disciplinary action. Most of the snipers removed the mirrors, not Donovan. He kept his hidden under canvas wrapping when not in use, removed during inspections, reinstalled in the field. Chen did the same. So did Wu. The three of them quietly continued using the mirrors through December and into January 1945 as the 5th Infantry Division pushed deeper into Germany. They shared the technique with snipers in other units, always off the record, always person to person. By February 1945, an estimated 43 American snipers across 3 divisions were using improvised mirror systems. None of them got official recognition. Several got written up for equipment violations, but they stayed alive. The German counter-innovation came in late December, December 28, 1944, outside Saarlouten, Germany, temperature -4 degrees Celsius. Corporal James Wu was the first to notice something had changed. He'd been in position for 19 minutes, scanning a frozen meadow between 2 destroyed farmhouses, when he caught movement in his left side mirror. A German soldier, but not moving like a sniper, moving like bait. Wu kept his scope trained forward but watched the mirror. The German walked deliberately across an open section, exposed, vulnerable, almost asking to be shot. Wu's finger rested on the trigger guard, but something felt wrong. Then he saw it in his right side mirror. A second German, 70 yards away, perfectly positioned to shoot anyone who pivoted to take the bait. "They've adapted," Wu whispered to his spotter. "They know about the mirrors." The German tactic was brilliant in its simplicity. If American snipers were using peripheral vision to watch their flanks, then create obvious peripheral threats to draw their attention. When the American sniper rotated to address the decoy, the real shooter, positioned based on predictable mirror placement, would have a clear shot. Wu marked the location and withdrew without firing. By December 30th, the 5th Infantry Division had confirmed the pattern in 3 separate incidents. The Germans had figured out that American snipers were seeing threats too quickly, responding to flanking movements too effectively. They'd deduced some kind of peripheral awareness system and developed counter-tactics. On January 2nd, 1945, Donovan and Chen met in a cellar in Saarlouten to discuss the problem. The mirror mod had worked for 6 weeks. Now it was becoming predictable. "We need to change the angle," Chen suggested. "If they're positioning based on standard mirror placement, we put the mirrors somewhere else." "Won't work," Donovan said, sketching in his notebook by candlelight. "The angles are limited by the scope mounting. We can go left, right, or slightly up. Those are the only options that don't block the scope view." "So we're back where we started?" "No." Donovan drew another diagram. "We're not back where we started. We're in a different game. Before, they didn't know we could see peripherally. Now they know, so we use that." Chen leaned forward. "How?" "We let them think they've figured us out. We use the mirrors as bait." The new tactic emerged over the next 3 days of testing. Donovan positioned his mirrors in the standard configuration, left and right, 45-degree angles. But instead of using them as his primary peripheral awareness system, he used them as decoys. His real peripheral awareness came from a spotter positioned 20 yards behind him, with a carefully angled signal mirror that could flash warnings without creating obvious light signatures. When Donovan spotted a target through his scope, he would deliberately shift his rifle slightly, as if he'd seen something in one of his mounted mirrors. The Germans, watching for this tell, would position their counter-snipers accordingly. But Donovan's actual awareness came from his spotter, who could see threats the Germans thought they'd concealed. The first test happened January 6, 1945, in a village called Saarvellingen. Donovan took position in a bombed-out church tower, 3rd floor, with clear sightlines across a frozen river. His rifle mirrors were clearly visible, deliberately so. Behind him, 40 yards away, in a separate building, Corporal Martinez acted as spotter with a small signal mirror. Through his scope, Donovan scanned the far riverbank. Nothing. He waited. The cold seeped through his gloves, numbed his trigger finger. He flexed his hand, kept the blood moving. 17 minutes in, Martinez flashed a signal. One long, two short. Threat, right flank, high position. Donovan didn't move. He kept scanning through his scope as if he'd seen nothing. Then he shifted his rifle 3 degrees right. A small movement, barely noticeable, but enough to suggest he'd seen something in his right side mirror. He waited. 30 seconds later, movement in his actual scope view. A German sniper, emerging from concealment on the left bank, the opposite direction from the real threat. This was the counter-ambush position, where the German expected Donovan to be vulnerable after rotating right. Donovan pivoted left instead. Fast. The German was exposed, mid-transition, his rifle not yet fully aimed. Donovan's shot hit center mass at 190 yards. The German dropped. Then Donovan pivoted hard right, toward the original threat position Martinez had signaled. The second German sniper was already firing. His bullet hit the stone wall 6 inches from Donovan's head, spraying rock fragments. Donovan's return shot hit the German in the shoulder. Non-fatal, but the enemy sniper fell back, disappearing into a destroyed building. "They're learning," Donovan told Chen that night, "but we're learning faster." By mid-January 1945, the mirror mod had evolved into something more complex than a simple peripheral vision tool. It had become part of a deception system, visible indicators that drew enemy attention, while the real awareness came from layered spotter networks and coordinated positioning. The Germans adapted again. They started ignoring obvious mirror-equipped snipers, focusing instead on positions without visible modifications. But by then, some American snipers had removed their mirrors entirely, relying on teamwork and fieldcraft. Others used fake mirrors, non-reflective metal rectangles that looked like mirrors but served only as bait. The cat-and-mouse game continued through February and March. On March 15, 1945, near Koblenz, Donovan participated in his last sniper engagement of the war. He'd been reassigned to training duties, teaching new replacements about urban combat and counter-sniper tactics. But one morning, a situation developed that required every available sniper. A German SS unit had fortified a cluster of buildings on the Rhine's east bank, and they had at least 4 snipers covering the approaches. American infantry had taken 23 casualties trying to cross an exposed bridge. Command needed those snipers eliminated before the next crossing attempt. Donovan led a team of 6 snipers, including Chen and Wu. They spent 4 hours positioning themselves in a coordinated network, each sniper covering another's blind spots, using a combination of mirrors, hand signals, and pre-planned shooting lanes. The engagement lasted 90 minutes. All 4 German snipers were eliminated. 0 American sniper casualties. The infantry crossed the bridge that afternoon with only light resistance. After-action reports credited superior positioning and coordinated tactics. No mention of mirrors, no mention of Donovan's system. But in the field, among the snipers who'd survived because of peripheral awareness and coordinated spotting, the technique was simply called pulling a Donovan. The war ended. Donovan came home to Harrisburg in October 1945, 24 years old, with a combat infantryman badge and exactly 0 commendations for the mirror system that had saved dozens of lives. He went back to his father's shop. Reynolds and Donovan's Mountain Men Outfitters never happened. Reynolds was buried in Montana, and Donovan didn't have the heart to do it alone. Instead, Donovan spent the next 37 years repairing tractors, combines, and irrigation equipment. He married a local girl named Dorothy in 1947. They had 3 kids. He never talked about the war, but the war had talked about him. In March 1946, 7 months after Donovan returned home, a package arrived at his father's shop. No return address. Inside was a photograph, black and white, slightly blurred, showing 3 soldiers examining a rifle with a mirror attached to the scope. On the back, someone had written, "Mauthausen, Austria, April 1945. Your idea made it all the way here. Thanks. Sergeant R. Kowalski." Donovan stared at the photo for a long time, then filed it away in a desk drawer. He never mentioned it to anyone. The letters came sporadically over the years. 1949, a postcard from James Wu in Portland. Opened a hardware store. Business is good. Still have the mirror. Still remember Metz. 1953, a wedding invitation from Louis Chen in San Francisco. Chen had married a girl he met at a church social. The invitation included a photo of Chen in his army dress uniform, and if you looked closely, you could see a small rectangular mirror hanging from his keychain. 1958, a letter from Corporal Martinez, the spotter who'd worked with Donovan near Saarvellingen. Martinez had become a high school shop teacher in Tucson, Arizona. He wrote, "I teach my students that the best innovations come from necessity and observation. I don't tell them about the war, but I think about your mirrors every time a kid solves a problem in an unexpected way." Donovan replied to some of the letters. Others he just kept. Dorothy asked once in 1961 why he had a box of old war correspondence in the garage. "Just guys I knew," Donovan said. "We went through something together." He didn't elaborate. The real scope of the mirror mod's impact didn't emerge until decades later. In 1998, when Dr. Ellen Vasquez began her research into World War II sniper innovations, she discovered something unexpected. The mirror technique hadn't been limited to Metz or to the 5th Infantry Division. It had spread through unofficial channels, soldier to soldier, unit to unit, theater to theater. Vasquez found references in 7 different unit histories. 95th Infantry Division, Germany, February 1945. Improvised optics modifications improved sniper survivability. 3rd Armored Division, Belgium, December 1944. Vehicle-mounted snipers using angled mirrors for peripheral coverage. 10th Mountain Division, Italy, March 1945. Alpine sniper teams employing reflective signaling and peripheral awareness devices. Each reference was vague, buried in technical reports, never detailed enough to be actionable. But Vasquez recognized the pattern. She started tracking down veterans. Sergeant Robert Kowalski, the soldier who'd sent Donovan the photo in 1946, was still alive in 2002, living in a nursing home in Cleveland. At age 81, his memory was sharp. "I learned about it from a replacement who'd trained with the 5th Infantry," Kowalski told Vasquez. "He showed me the setup, mirror on the scope, watch your flanks. I thought it was genius. I made my own version from a signal mirror, saved my life outside Mauthausen when an SS sniper tried to flank me." Kowalski had taught the technique to 4 other snipers in his unit. 3 of them survived the war. "We never got official approval," Kowalski said, "but we didn't ask for it. In combat, you use what works. Regulations are for peacetime." Private First Class Daniel Torres, interviewed in 2000 at age 76, had been a sniper with the 10th Mountain Division in Italy. "Someone showed me a rifle with a small mirror taped to it," Torres recalled. "Said it was a trick from France. I tried it in the Alps. Made sense. You need to watch for avalanches, enemy movement, everything at once. The mirror gave you that split-second warning." Torres had never heard Donovan's name. He didn't know where the technique originated, but he'd used a version of it through March and April 1945, and he credited it with allowing him to survive 2 separate counter-sniper ambushes. Staff Sergeant William Hayes, 3rd Armored Division, interviewed in 1999. "We mounted mirrors on our half-tracks, not for sniping, for convoy defense. Someone said infantry snipers were doing it in France. We figured if it worked for them, it might work for us. We could watch the rear approach while manning the forward gun." Hayes's modification saved his convoy from an ambush on March 22, 1945. He spotted German Panzerfaust teams in his mirror and called for evasive maneuvers before they could fire. 12 men survived because of a 3-inch mirror zip-tied to a machine gun mount. By 2003, Vasquez had documented 47 separate instances of mirror modifications across 9 different U.S. Army divisions between November 1944 and May 1945. Conservative estimates suggested the technique had directly saved between 140 and 170 lives, and indirectly contributed to hundreds more through improved situational awareness. None of the official Army reports mentioned Donovan's name. Most didn't mention mirrors at all. Vasquez tried to interview Donovan in 1998, but he died 16 years earlier. She spoke with Dorothy instead, in the small house on Elm Street, where the Donovans had lived since 1949. "He never talked about being a hero," Dorothy said, serving coffee in the living room. "He talked about being cold, being scared, losing friends." Once, our son asked him if he'd ever killed anyone. Michael said yes, and then he went quiet for a long time. That was the end of the conversation. Dorothy showed Vasquez the box from the garage. Letters, photos, a newspaper clipping about the liberation of Metz, and at the bottom, wrapped in oilcloth, a small rectangular shaving mirror with holes drilled in the frame. The original mirror from Donovan's rifle, brought home in his duffel bag in October 1945. "I asked him once why he kept it," Dorothy said. "He told me it reminded him that sometimes the simplest answer is the right one. I didn't understand what he meant." Vasquez held the mirror carefully. It was scratched, tarnished, the reflection cloudy with age, but she could see the paracord marks where it had been lashed to a rifle scope, the tape residue that had held it in place. "Mrs. Donovan," Vasquez said, "would you be willing to donate this to the Army Heritage Center? It's an important piece of history." Dorothy was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. "Michael would have said it's just a mirror. But if it helps people remember what those boys did, then yes, take it." The mirror is currently held in the Army Heritage Center's archives in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. It's not on public display. It's stored in a climate-controlled room in a labeled box. Donovan Michael J. Personal Effects, W2 Sniper Innovations. Next to it in the archives is James Wu's mirror from Portland, donated in 2004, and a signal mirror from Robert Kowalski, donated in 2003, and a photograph of William Hayes's half-track with a mirror mounted to the gun turret. Pieces of an innovation that the Army never officially recognized, preserved by historians who understood that the most important breakthroughs often come from soldiers, not generals. In 2019, the Army Sniper School at Fort Benning added a section to their training manual about improvised peripheral awareness systems. The manual doesn't mention Donovan by name, but it includes this paragraph. Throughout military history, soldiers have developed field-expedient solutions to tactical problems using available materials. The integration of reflective surfaces for peripheral threat detection, pioneered by American snipers in the European theater, 1944-45, demonstrates the value of individual initiative and practical innovation in combat environments. It's the closest thing to recognition Donovan ever received. Michael Donovan died in 1982, age 61, from a heart attack while changing a transmission. His obituary in the Harrisburg Patriot News didn't mention Mets, didn't mention snipers, didn't mention mirrors. It said he was survived by his wife, 3 children, and 7 grandchildren. It said he'd been a mechanic who loved fishing and rarely missed a Steelers game. That's how most people remembered him. But in Portland, when James Wu passed away in 2006 at age 81, his obituary included this line: Jim served with distinction in World War II and credited his survival to the ingenuity and brotherhood of his fellow soldiers. In San Francisco, when Louis Chen died in 2011 at age 88, his family found a small mirror in his workshop with an engraved inscription, Mets 1944, still works. In Tucson, when Corporal Martinez retired from teaching in 1989, his students gave him a plaque. It read, "To Mr. Martinez, who taught us that the best tool is often the simplest one." And in Cleveland, Robert Kowalski's grandson found his grandfather's war diary in 2008. One entry, dated April 28, 1945, read, "Use the mirror trick again today. German sniper tried to flank me while I was covering the bridge. Saw him in the reflection, got the shot off first. Don't know the name of the guy who invented this, but whoever he was, he saved my life. Someone should put up a statue." There's no statue. But there are 47 men who came home from World War II because a mechanic from Harrisburg figured out that a shaving mirror and some paracord could beat German optics and tactics. There are hundreds of children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who exist because Michael Donovan refused to follow regulations that made no tactical sense. And there are thousands of soldiers, in wars that came after, who survived because the principle Donovan discovered, see the threat before the threat sees you, became embedded in doctrine, training, and equipment design. That's the legacy no official report will ever capture. But there was one mission that demonstrated everything the mirror technique had become, and one German officer who understood exactly what he was facing. February 11, 1945, outside Prüm, Germany, temperature -7 degrees Celsius, snow falling steadily. The mission briefing was straightforward. A German artillery observation post was directing fire from a church tower in the center of Prüm, a medieval town now reduced to rubble. 3 previous attempts to neutralize the post had failed. 5 American snipers had been killed trying. The Germans had turned the area around the church into a killing field, interlocking fields of fire, concealed positions, and at least 2 highly skilled counter-snipers protecting the observer. Captain Morris called it a sniper's nightmare. Then he assigned it to Donovan. "I need that observer dead by 1600 hours, Morris said, spreading a map across the hood of a jeep. "If he's still calling in coordinates after dark, the entire Third Army advance stalls here. We'll lose a day, maybe 2, and men will die." Donovan studied the map. The church tower was 840 yards from the nearest American position. Extreme range for a Springfield, possible but difficult. The approach was across open ground, and the Germans had clear sight lines from at least 7 buildings. "I'll need 4 snipers," Donovan said, "and complete freedom to position them. You got Chen, Wu, and Martinez. Pick a 4th. Private Kellerman, the replacement from Ohio. Kellerman's 19 years old, been in combat for 3 weeks. He's got good eyes and he listens. That's what I need. By 1100 hours, Donovan had positioned his team in a pattern that looked random but was anything but. This wasn't the mirror mod anymore. It had evolved into something more complex. A system. A network. Donovan took the primary position in a bombed-out bakery, 840 yards from the church tower. His Springfield had no mirror attached. Instead, he had a small signal mirror in his pocket and a clear view of Chen's position, 150 yards to his left. Chen, positioned in a collapsed apartment building, had a mirror on his rifle, but it was angled backward toward Donovan's position. When Chen spotted a threat, he would adjust the mirror's angle. Donovan, watching through binoculars, would see the reflection change and know where the danger was. Wu took a position 200 yards to the right, elevated, with no mirror at all. His job was pure observation, watching the German counter-sniper positions, tracking movement patterns, and using hand signals to communicate with Martinez. Martinez, the most exposed position, set up in a destroyed vehicle 300 yards forward. He had 2 mirrors on his rifle, both fake, non-reflective metal that looked real from a distance. He was bait. His real job was to draw German attention while the others worked. Kellerman, the 19-year-old replacement, was positioned 400 yards behind everyone else with a clear view of the entire battlefield and a signal mirror. He was the early warning system, the one who could see threats developing before anyone else. It was the most sophisticated sniper network Donovan had ever designed. 5 men, coordinated without radios or verbal communication, using nothing but mirrors, hand signals, and pre-arranged firing plans. "Remember," Donovan had told them during the briefing, "the Germans know about mirrors now. They'll be watching for them, so we give them what they expect and do something different." At 11:47 hours, Martinez moved into position. Within 3 minutes, Donovan saw movement in a building 200 yards from Martinez's location. A German sniper, repositioning to get an angle on the obvious American with mirrors on his rifle. Donovan didn't take the shot. Instead, he watched. The German was careful, professional, taking his time. He was setting up to ambush Martinez the moment Martinez engaged the church tower. Then Kellerman flashed a signal from the rear position. 2 short, 1 long, second threat, high angle. Donovan shifted his binoculars. There, in a 3rd-story window 400 yards northeast, another German sniper watching Martinez, but also watching the approaches. This one had line of sight to both Chen and Wu's positions. The Germans had learned well. They weren't just countering individual snipers anymore. They were countering sniper teams, but they didn't know about Kellerman. At 1203 hours, Donovan saw Chen adjust his mirror, a slight rotation catching the pale winter sunlight. The signal was clear, ready. Donovan looked through his scope, settling the crosshairs on the church tower observation post, 840 yards away. He could see the German artillery spotter, partially concealed behind sandbags, binoculars raised. The wind was gusting from the northwest at approximately 8 miles per hour. Donovan calculated the correction, adjusted his aim. He didn't fire yet. Instead, he waited for the Germans to commit. At 12:09 hours, Martinez fired, deliberately missing the church tower, his round hitting the stone facade 6 feet to the left. It was the bait shot. The signal to the Germans that an engagement was starting. The German sniper watching Martinez took it. He pivoted, bringing his rifle to bear on Martinez's position. Chen fired. The German dropped. Simultaneously, the second German sniper, the one in the 3rd-story window, pivoted toward Chen's position exactly as Donovan had predicted. The German had heard Chen's shot, knew Chen had just killed his partner, and was reacting with trained precision. Wu fired from his elevated position. The second German sniper fell backward into his building. Now the church tower observer knew he was under attack. He began to retreat, pulling back from the sandbags. Donovan exhaled slowly, let his heartbeat settle, squeezed the trigger. The Springfield kicked. Through the scope, Donovan saw the German observer's head snap back. The man collapsed behind the sandbags. Total elapsed time, 17 seconds, 3 Germans dead, 0 American casualties. But the mission wasn't over. At 12:12 hours, Kellerman flashed an urgent signal, multiple threats converging. The Germans were sending reinforcements, a counter-sniper team moving through the rubble toward Martinez's exposed position. Kellerman's elevated rear position allowed him to see what no one else could. 4 German soldiers moving tactically, trying to flank the American sniper team. Donovan made a decision. Fall back. He signaled to Martinez using a prearranged mirror flash. Martinez withdrew immediately, using a covered route they'd planned before the mission. The German counter-sniper team reached Martinez's abandoned position 3 minutes later. They found empty shell casings and a discarded mirror, a fake one deliberately left behind. By then, all 5 American snipers had withdrawn to secondary positions 600 yards further back. They watched through binoculars as the Germans searched the area, found nothing, and eventually withdrew. The artillery observer was dead. The mission was complete. And the Germans had learned something troubling. The Americans weren't just using mirrors anymore. They were using coordination, deception, and tactical networks that traditional counter-sniper doctrine couldn't defeat. 2 days later, American intelligence intercepted a German radio transmission. It was partially encoded, but the gist was clear. American sniper tactics in Prüm sector indicate sophisticated coordination system. Conventional counter-sniper measures proving ineffective. Recommend revised doctrine emphasizing team-based defense rather than individual hunter-killer response. The transmission was signed by Hauptmann Klaus Richter, a German sniper instructor who'd been sent to the Western Front to assess why German counter-sniper casualties had increased 340% since November 1944. After the war, Richter's field notes were recovered from German archives. On February 13, 1945, he'd written, "The Americans have developed something new. It appears to be a system rather than a technique. Multiple shooters working in coordinated fashion, using optical signals for communication. I observed an engagement near Prüm, where 5 American snipers eliminated 3 German positions in less than 30 seconds with no casualties. The precision and coordination suggest extensive training, but intelligence reports indicate these are not specialist units. These are ordinary soldiers who have adapted to circumstances. This is the most dangerous development I've observed. Equipment can be countered, training can be matched, but tactical innovation at the individual soldier level, this is much harder to defeat. If this spreads throughout American sniper forces, our current doctrine will be obsolete." Richter survived the war. In 1983, he was interviewed by a German military historian studying Wehrmacht sniper tactics. The interviewer asked about the most effective American innovations Richter had encountered. "The mirror system," Richter said immediately. "Not because mirrors are particularly advanced. Any soldier could attach a reflective surface to a rifle, but because it represented a fundamental shift in how American snipers thought about their role. They stopped being individual hunters and became networked sensors. That was brilliant, and it came from field necessity, not from staff officers or training manuals." The interviewer asked if Richter knew who had invented the technique. "No," Richter said. "Some American private, I assume. We never captured anyone who could tell us, but whoever he was, he understood something important. In modern warfare, awareness is more valuable than marksmanship. You can't kill what you can't see, but more importantly, you can't be killed by what you see first." Richter died in 1991, age 74. His field notes are preserved in the Bundesarchiv Militärarchiv in Freiburg, Germany. On page 47 of his February 1945 journal, there's a sketch. a rough diagram showing how he believed the American mirror system worked. It's remarkably accurate. Below the sketch, Richter wrote, "Simple, obvious, effective, the best innovations always are." Back in Prum, February 11th, 1945, Donovan and his team returned to American lines at 14:40 hours. Captain Morris was waiting. "Observers dead," Donovan reported. "Artillery fire should stop." "It already has." Morris studied Donovan for a moment. "3 Germans dead, I heard. Clean up. How'd you coordinate without radios?" "Mirrors," Donovan said, "and guys who pay attention." Morris nodded slowly. He wanted to ask more, wanted to understand the system Donovan had created, but he knew the answer would violate about 15 different equipment regulations. "Good work," he said instead. "Get some rest. We move out at 600. That night, in a basement shelter, Donovan's team sat around a small fire, drinking coffee from canteen cups. Martinez was cleaning his rifle. Chen was writing a letter home. Wu was sketching in a small notebook. Kellerman, the 19-year-old replacement, sat quietly, still processing what he'd just experienced. "You did good today," Donovan told Kellerman. "That early warning on the counter-sniper team saved Martinez's life." Kellerman nodded. "The mirrors, that whole system, who taught you that?" "Nobody taught me. I figured it out because I had to. You think the Army will ever make it official, put it in the manuals?" Donovan was quiet for a moment. "Probably not. Official means paperwork, testing, approval processes. By the time that happens, the war will be over. So we just keep doing it. We keep doing what works. If that means mirrors and hand signals, then yeah, we keep doing it." Chen looked up from his letter. "You know what's strange? In a few months, this'll all be over. We'll go home, and 10 years from now, nobody will remember how we did any of this." "Maybe that's okay," Wu said. "We didn't do it for the recognition. We did it because men were dying and we found a way to stop it." Donovan stared into the fire, thinking about Reynolds and Harper and the 12 other American snipers who died before anyone figured out the solution. "Reynolds would have liked to see how this turned out," he said quietly. "He was always the one saying we needed to work smarter, not harder. He would have been proud," Chen said. "This whole thing, it's exactly what he would have wanted." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the distant rumble of artillery, the crack of small arms fire somewhere in the darkness. The war continued, but in that moment, in that basement shelter, 5 men understood something that no official report would ever capture. Innovation doesn't come from headquarters. It comes from necessity, from soldiers who refuse to accept that there's only one way to do things. From men who look at a problem that's killing their friends, and say there has to be a better way. And sometimes that better way is as simple as a shaving mirror and some paracord. The fire burned low. One by one, the snipers settled into their bedrolls. Tomorrow they'd move out, heading deeper into Germany, facing new challenges, adapting to new threats. But tonight, they'd survived. And that was enough. Donovan fell asleep with his Springfield beside him, no mirror attached. He didn't need it anymore. He'd taught 4 other men the system. The knowledge would spread. The innovation would continue. Even if history forgot his name, the idea would survive, and in war, sometimes that's the only immortality that matters. He died in 1982, age 61, from a heart attack while changing a transmission. His obituary in the Harrisburg Patriot News didn't mention Mets, didn't mention snipers, didn't mention mirrors. In 1998, a military historian named Dr. Ellen Vasquez was researching sniper tactics at the Army Heritage Center in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. She found a reference in a private's diary, Louis Chen's diary, describing Donovan's mirror trick and its impact on survival rates in Mets. Vasquez tracked down James Wu, who was still alive in Portland at age 73. Wu still had his original mirror, wrapped in oilcloth, stored in his attic. "I kept it because it saved my life 4 times, Wu told Vasquez. 5, if you count the time I saw a German patrol in the reflection and called in artillery." Vasquez interviewed 8 surviving veterans who'd used the mirror mod. All of them credited Donovan. None of them had ever received official recognition. The Army had no record of the modification in any tactical manual or innovation report. In 2003, the American Sniper Association, a private organization of military and law enforcement snipers, created a small display at their annual conference in Fort Benning, Georgia. It featured a replica of Donovan's mirror-rigged Springfield, based on descriptions from Chen's diary and Wu's testimony. The placard read, "Private First Class Michael Donovan, 5th Infantry Division, Metz, 1944. Improvised peripheral vision system, estimated 40-plus lives saved, never officially recognized." The display stayed up for 1 year. Then it was removed to make space for a sponsor booth. But the idea didn't die. Modern military optics now include peripheral awareness systems, electronic displays, wide-angle cameras, integrated threat detection. The technology is different. The principle is the same. See the threat before the threat sees you. Michael Donovan figured that out with a shaving mirror and some paracord in a bombed-out pharmacy in November 1944. The Army told him to remove it. He refused. And because he refused, 43 snipers went home to their families instead of dying in the rubble of French and German cities. There's no monument to Donovan in Harrisburg, no military medal, no textbook mentions his name. But somewhere in the Army Heritage Center archives, in a box marked Unit Diaries, 5th Infantry Division, 1944, there's a handwritten note from Louis Chen, dated November 22, 1944. "Donovan's mirror saved my life today. 2nd time this week. We need to get this approved officially, but until then, I'm keeping it on my rifle. Regs be damned." If this story moved you, hit that like button. Not for the algorithm, but because stories like Michael Donovan's deserve to be told. Subscribe to this channel to hear more forgotten tales of innovation and courage from World War II. And drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Do you know a veteran whose story was never told? Share it with us. We read every single one. Thank you for keeping these heroes alive.